First, let's jump into it, Will. You will feel isolated and very lonely. Like, that's just what it is. You mentioned it before. No one's going to understand you. You're going to lose all your friends. They don't tell us about this, Will. What's this like? Let's define it for everyone.
It wasn't in the instruction manual. What's weird about it is it's really hard for this to not happen. It's really hard for it to not happen. And there's a bunch of things that, like, over the years, I've been doing this for 31 years. There's a bunch of things that I didn't quite understand initially. I thought you start a company and, like, at the very least, you hire, let's say you hire lots of people, tons of people.
Yeah.
And you get to interact with them all day. So when I started my first company, it was an ad agency. And all the people I hired were people I liked, right? And so I was like, this is great. And we were all super young. We're like in our early 20s. And we'd all go out and hang out in the evenings together and things like that. And I was like, oh, this is wonderful. Like a friend group that I also get to work with. And then in a very short period of time, I started to realize that my role as the founder and CEO had a different impact on everybody else, right? Because I was their boss. I know that sounds obvious, but it was odd to me, right? So Ed, we'd be out and I could tell there's things people aren't talking about because they don't want me to hear about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like the one guy said, yeah, I took the day off and did whatever. Like, he doesn't want me to hear about that. And that's just a small, tiny thing, right? But then I saw the other side of it, which was where I had to isolate myself.
Ooh, okay.
So, for example, company's running out of money. It's not like over drinks, I'm going to tell everybody at the company that we're almost out of money, right? That would terrify everybody. That's my problem to fix, okay? So now I'm isolated. I can't talk about that. I have a problem with one of the other employees. Who can I talk to about it? I can't talk to the other employees about it, right? If I talked to my friends at the time, none of my friends were founders. They're still in college. At the time, I didn't have anybody else to talk to about this stuff. So all of a sudden, my work life started to isolate me from other people having other conversations. When you go to lunch with your coworkers, you work at whatever big co, you can bullshit about the company all day. And all people do when they go to lunch anyways, complain about the company and their boss, right? But when you are the boss, you can't do any of that. It's really interesting. It took me a long time to get my head around it. What was your take on it, Ed, like as far as the isolation?
One of the things that an early mentor told me, and this just was in life in general, he said, if you're going to be successful in life and you're not losing friends along the way, then you're doing it wrong. There's something going on there, right? And, Will, I look back and I don't know what it is, but I am not friends with any of my best friends during high school and university because my ambitions and the things that I cared about and talked about, I'm sitting there going, I'm trying to raise $1 million. And they're saying, well, I'm just trying to add another 100 square feet to my house type thing. Like, you just get alienated. And even if you wanted to talk to them about this stuff, like, you can't.
Right. They don't appreciate it. Right. This is a hilarious example, but it's when you try to talk to people who don't have kids about the problems with kids, they understand it. They were a kid. Right. But they're not going through that same experience. When we talk about our startup problems, like raising money, et cetera, people understand it conceptually, but they're not actually going through it.
Sure.
Right? Like, when I'm looking to raise my next round, I'm not just thinking about my company needs money. I'm thinking about every single person that I see at work today relies on me to make their mortgage payment. And if I screw this up, if I don't raise that round, I will have ruined the lives of every single one of these people. The person I'm talking to over drinks, my good buddy, they're like, oh man, I'm going to miss my sales numbers this month. I might not get a commission. That's it. That's all they have to worry about, right? They miss the sales numbers, might not get a commission. And their problems are their own. Everybody's pain is their own. But they have no appreciation for what I'm talking about. They have no consequence beyond themselves.
It's the same thing. If you become the CEO, you're on the cap table, you're a co-founder versus employee. But then I challenge people. I say, that whole story, the sword of Damocles, right? With the sword. And for those of you who might not have heard it, it's about a servant who says, oh, it must be so nice being the king. And the king says, okay, well, here, I'll let you have my job. You can sit in my seat. And he hangs a sword by a thread above the throne that could break at any moment. And you're just dealing with different types of conditions. So That's the first thing. Second thing, Will, you know what weirds me out, and it took me a while to wrap my head around it, and I think a lot of founders need to be okay with acknowledging this. It's weirder when you are surrounded with people, you're connected. Will, I can get on my phone and I can send you a message. I can send anybody a message anytime. I am never alone, ever, if I don't want to be. Yet I feel lonely. And I think that cognitive dissonance, that gap in the perception, reality, what's happening on the outside, what you're feeling on the inside, really makes founders go through some emotional turmoil. And sometimes I think founders feel guilty or ashamed that they feel alone and isolated, and then they don't think they can talk about it.
Right. Well, but being alone has to do with commonality, right? So you can be in a room full of people, you can be with your own family, but if your issues have no commonality, then yes, they're there, but they don't understand what you're talking about, right? And so, that feeling of being isolated has a lot to do with what it is that you're dealing with, right? I got a 13-year-old daughter. She's amazing, right? But she's going through 13-year-old daughter stuff. My wife might understand it, right? I don't understand it. I mean, like I talk to her infinitely. I'm just saying that like I haven't been through what she's going through. So she has the risk of becoming isolated. Even though the people around her love her so much and care about her so much, they don't have commonality. And the lack of commonality, which is so flagrant among founders, is a massive issue.
Yes. And so, Wil, we've acknowledged, we have identified this. We're doing all the founders a favor, especially the new ones. You're going to feel this, and it's okay. It's normal. Wil, what were the things that you did to address this, or what do you do now, and what would you recommend?
I think part of it was understanding why it was happening.
Gotcha.
Right? Again, it was challenging in the formative stages when I was first starting my career, because I've pretty much been a CEO my entire life, right? And so most people grow up to become a CEO, right? I started as a CEO. So there's a lot I never learned. Like I didn't even learn what it meant to be an intern, much less a CEO. So I kind of had to do this backward. And so no one kind of like pulled me aside and said, well, this is what's going to happen. Unfortunately, I had to do on-the-job training for 30 years. And with that, I started to realize that like the stuff I go through is unique to me in my position.
Gotcha.
Right? Like,
yep.
Again, if we're going to miss a funding round, everyone else loses their job, but I lost everyone's jobs. Right? And that is a brutal weight. At any given time, if the market changes, if there's a lawsuit, if there's like, some just cataclysmic event, everyone else, they might lose their job. And I'm not saying that lightly, but I might lose my house, right?
Yeah.
Like I might lose everything. And a lot of people don't have that level of consequence, thankfully, or it certainly can't understand it. And it took me a long time to realize that there wasn't really parity out there.
I have gone through a lot of hours of therapy. I've got the receipts to work through this stuff. I've gone on retreats. I've gotten help. I've gotten to the point where it's a humbling experience to say, I need help and I'm okay with not being okay.
Yep.
But I had an executive coach, Wil, one time tell me, he said, Ed, it is your responsibility to train the people in your life, help them help you on how you need support. And I took that very seriously. Give you an example. So we're both married, which is great. Yep. Your wife is fabulous. I hope you get to meet mine one day. And the thing that I really like are hugs. So I'm a physical affection, huggy, kissy, gropey kind of guy, right?
Yep.
I'm always the big spoon. Okay. Let's put it that way. So, and my wife is just not. She's got other ways that she shows attention and affection, but I literally had to train her. And if I was having a tough day, I would say, I need a hug. And then I would say, you need to hold this hug for 1 minute. I am asking you. Exactly. You got to go with me on this one. I need your help to get on the other side. And to her credit, she's really good. Like she responded because she wanted to, but she never had the context on how to help me as a founder to get me through that loneliness and isolation. So that's a technique that I use. What do you think?
I think that building a social circle around you where you can develop commonality, most people don't have it by default, to be fair. Right. So it's a big reason why we tell people to surround themselves with at least a few other founders.
Exactly.
You were at one of our founder groups in person when you were in town about a month ago. You saw how like 6 or 7 other founders, as we sat around one of the founders' living rooms, were very open about the things they're dealing with. And they knew instantly that everyone in the room knew exactly what they were going through.
Well, not only that, they were happy to see each other. Yeah. And it was like, oh, I'm so glad I get to be here, just kind of venting and talking. Yep. And they were so grateful to have a conversation. And I've seen this over and over again. And it's the reason, Wil, we have founder groups, we have peer groups, we do this thing called Startups.com. We get people together and we say, hey, you are not alone. Right. There are people, they may not be next door in your house, they may not be even in your city, but we are here together. And I think that's what makes what we do so special, not bragging on us, but I wish I had this when I first started.
Oh man, that's why we built it, because we built the community we wish we had. And I got to tell you, when you see a lot of other founders, like we go out and like recruit founders to like in our communities, and they don't realize that this exists. And then they sit in a room full of other founders, and they realize instantly they finally found their tribe, and they can be honest about all these things they've been holding back. It's amazing. It's wildly cathartic.
That's what we're talking about today, everybody. Things they didn't warn me about to be successful in startups.